Mad Max is the most kinetic action franchise that is out there, period. And it's also incredibly unique since it's an entire series from one director who has been steering the ship from the late 70s when it was a little revenge thriller to the kinetic aggressive revenge film Furiosa. This franchise is genre defining and a staple in the history of cinematic storytelling, so we're going to review and rank all 5 Mad Max films, and hopefully by the end, we can see why these films are so special and why they make you want to dive headfirst off a car with a spear in your hand. So here is my review and ranking of every Mad Max movie.
American International presents Mad Max, the maximum force of the future.
This film, unlike the rest, is really interesting due to its quiet simplicity. It's just a couple trying to survive in probably the chillest apocalypse ever due to how razor thin of a budget this movie is on. But that's what gives this movie its charm. This is a very well made small indie film with stunts that feel extremely dangerous and exciting due to it being a film with such a small budget. Mel Gibson is also really good as Max. No, I'm not going to talk about anything he's done outside of this because, let's just say I am not equipped here to adequately articulate my disdain for Mel Gibson and his actions on a personal level and how damaging they are, while also explaining how I was engrossed in the film due to his performance, which transforms him in my eyes to another character, removing any associations I've had with him instead of his actions outside of the film because I am not currently thinking of them due to interacting with the art on its own merits. I think I read that right. If I didn't do it right, whatever, my lawyer can sue me. Anyway, he's an awful person, but he's also pretty decent in this movie, but still, Tom Hardy clears his Max, so it doesn't really matter. Anyway, this is a very good and solid Mad Max film, and it's a really good time, so check it out. 7 out of 10. Anyways, let's get on to the other 2 Mad Max movies in this trilogy now that we have the huge Mel Gibson elephant out of the way. Mad Max 2 is nuts. It's way more apocalyptic than the first film, it's way more violent, way darker, and it's got Lord Humongous and possibly the coolest car ever in any movie. And everyone loves this movie, and honestly, the worst part is, it just kind of isn't my thing. The story and emotional investment for me just isn't as intense as the first film with Max and his family, and it has stepped up with the creativity in the filmmaking, but it never fully hooked me. It's a movie that I end up respecting more than actually enjoying. I mean, this movie looks like an absolute pain to make, but overall, this is just a movie that really isn't my thing, and there's a lot more Mad Max movies that end up connecting with me. Still though, I like it, 6 out of 10, and it's way better than Thunderdome. Speaking of which, when you hear the title, Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome, I guarantee you're not thinking of this. If this movie was called Mad Max Runs a YMCA in the Jungle, I think I would like this movie way more because it was more honest. The problem I have with Thunderdome is there are a lot of cool ideas in this movie, and the film starts off really strong. It's got really cool apocalyptic ideas. I love how grungy and gross the entire beginning is. Master Blaster is awesome, but once Max is exiled, the entire film goes downhill and you really feel where the studio mandates came in. It feels very much like a Spielberg film that they're including kids to appeal to that market since it was the late 80s. It feels like a worse implementation of the Ewoks, and worst of all, it's just an incredibly dull movie. I was trying really hard not to fall asleep while I was watching this one, and after you watch Beyond Thunderdome, you kind of see why the Mad Max franchise kind of went dormant for like 30 years. This isn't awful, it's just a really disappointing sequel with a lot of potential. So 4 out of 10, but luckily this was not the last we saw of the Mad Max franchise, because 30 years later, Fury Road came out. This is the best one, and no, it's not because it's just a really good Mad Max movie, but because this is one of the greatest films ever made. There are always a few films floating around in my Letterboxd top 4, and Fury Road is one of them. And at one point it was my #1 movie of all time. Why? Because this is what I love about filmmaking. Kinetic style with an insanely strong voice of anger and rage, while also being a film that knows when to let off the gas and allow us to breathe in the hope and humanity of the world that just seems fully devoid of it. It's a film that matches endless creativity with exceptional use of structure in its storytelling to create such an energetic, fast pace while substituting out dialogue exposition with production and world design to tell its backstory. It truly is unique in and of itself, and it is the epitome of visual filmmaking, using intense blocking and action with quick editing and speed ramping to add velocity to the film. It's all about rage and excitement, all boiling up to a brim into a film that just blows your mind. This movie is awesome. Fury Road is like my favorite thing ever. Fury Road is a 10 out of 10. Just hit this shot real quick. And then we have Furiosa, the last Mad Max movie. The first word that pops into my mind when I think of this film is energy. From the opening shot, there is motion, and it doesn't really let up. This is a film that borders on being visual overload, and through that, it is able to create one of the most beautiful and intense action revenge films that we have ever seen. It felt impossible to go bigger after what we got at Fury Road, and this doesn't fully, but it straddles the line of upping the spectacle of Fury Road while also grounding the story to be more focused on the full revenge of Furiosa. Blending the two stylistic approaches to create a film that doesn't feel that it relies on Fury Road, but just like the titular character herself, stands alone as her own thing, while clicking into place with Fury Road as this bizarre puzzle piece. I can see how some people might not love this film due to how it removes the mystique of Fury Road by showing some places that were mentioned in passing, like the Bullet Farm or my favorite, Gastown, but with how the series is not really built on continuity and never really has been, and kind of falls in that idea of memories just like Sam being created and erased, I think that ends up working for me since both films feel different enough for me that I don't really care if this film showed what Bullet Farm looked like, because I'm not really thinking about what the Bullet Farm looked like when I'm watching Fury Road. So for me, Furiosa didn't take anything away from Fury Road. If anything, it just ended up enhancing it. This film is violent, it's endlessly creative, it's unique, and it's a film at times that shines just as strongly as Fury Road, even if I think in its effort to do more, it ends up being a little bit more bloated and doesn't end up hitting that creative perfection that Fury Road hits. This still, though, remains a towering achievement for George Miller and team and shows that this is one of the deepest franchises with infinite creativity and stories to tell. And I hope George Miller knows and understands that and creates Mad Max The Wasteland. This film is wonderful, 9 out of 10. And that is the insanity of the Mad Max franchise, from the bizarre first trilogy to the revived insanity that we see today with the recent action films of Furiosa and Fury Road. But though, we're going to rank them real quick. These are my personal rankings, your list can be different, let me know down below. But 5th place for me is Beyond Thunderdome. Just not my thing, and a bizarre spin-off of a dark, gritty apocalypse film. And honestly, if I'm ever going to rewatch these films, this is the one I'm going to skip. 4th place, I'm going to get some heat for this, but I'm going to say Mad Max 2 The Road Warrior. This one, for me, just comes down to personal taste. I prefer the more intimate style of the original film over this one's characters, and I prefer the stylistic approach of Furiosa and Fury Road much more in this film as well, because they get much more outlandish and creative. So this one just ends up being a bizarre middle ground and a film that just doesn't resonate with me as strongly as it did for a lot of other people, and I know it just comes down to personal taste. So, 4th place. 3rd place is Mad Max, a film where the passion and grit of the production shines through the final film. It's exciting, it's intense, and easily the most unique out of the entire series on a visual and stylistic approach compared to the others. Number 2 for me is going to be Furiosa, Mad Max Saga. It's brilliant and intense and breathtaking through the entire runtime, and few films understand how to show action and world building this beautiful and all visually. There's very little dialogue, yet that leads to the few words that are actually said being so much more special. And this is a film that I can see myself revisiting for years to come. I absolutely love this movie. But none of them beat Mad Max Fury Road, an all-time classic, maybe the best action film ever made. It's endlessly creative and probably gets a little more love from me due to it being the first Mad Max film that I ever watched. And yeah, I love this movie so much, and there's nothing more that I could really add to the conversation. Just hit the shot. And that is the entire Mad Max franchise reviewed and ranked. And honestly, by the end of this video, I am a bit tired. I'm going to take a break from George Miller's filmography for a bit, unless he made something that's really special and something I really want to dive into. Oh, he directed Babe 2? The Pig movie? Oh, never mind, I'm going to be back in a sec. I'm going to make that Babe film franchise 4-hour video essay that'll pop off in the algorithm in 8 months. See ya!